This morning, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to welcome and introduce the instructional leader for the next couple of days who will be guiding our learning journey. Our friend and very strong advocate for public school education, Mr. Wayne Hulley. Wayne Hulley is president of both the North Star Centre and the Canadian Effective Schools Incorporated in Burlington, Ontario. He's taught at every grade level and has been principal and superintendent in and around the Toronto area. He's also taught motivational theory at 4 Canadian universities. He's a senior consultant with the Franklin Covey Company and has offered 7 Habits training across North America. The book, Harbors of Hope, which he co-authored with Linda Dyer, highlights the characteristics of schools and classrooms that make a significant difference in the lives of all students by creating hope through success. The book develops the planning for school and student success process for improving student achievement, attitudes and behavior, and attendance. Their new book, Getting By or Getting Better, develops the 7 lessons that schools must learn if they have an intention of making success for all students a reality. Wayne has worked with Richard and Becky DeFore in support of the development of professional learning communities in schools. He's also been a part of institutes on assessment offered by Rick Stiggins. Recently, he became a partner in the One Smart World Corporation, where he is developing materials to support better thinking in schools. His presentations combine research on school and student effectiveness with good humor and practical suggestions for action. He believes that the mission of every school should be learning by all, whatever it takes. He's worked with numerous school districts in Alberta supporting improvement initiatives under AC, and his background in planning has also allowed him to provide support in the area of organizational improvement. He presently sits on a board that advises the director of the Toronto School District Board as well. And he's worked with a number of school districts across Canada in the area of strategic planning. He also has experience working with the private sector, supporting the work of Air Canada, Hockey Canada, Skate Canada, WestCan, and McDonald's restaurants. He recently played a major role in the development of a strategic plan for the University of California, Pennsylvania. Wayne, it is a treat to have you back with us and offer you a warm PSBAA welcome.
The way I see the world is not as it is, it's as I am. So none of you in this room have had my life. I grew up on a dairy farm outside of Paris, Ontario. My dad and I, in the best of times, would milk somewhere between 20 and 25 Holsteins every morning. And we had a surge milker that never worked because this was a long time ago. And so we would hand pull. I'd get up about 4:45. I'd hand pull with my dad till about 7:30 so I could get on the school bus and go to school stinking. Everybody knew I'd been to the barn. And I hated those mornings, especially in the winter when it was damn cold. But in hindsight, going back to those days, the fun my dad and I had in the barn could never be replaced. And so many of you I know, because we're in Alberta, have had a farm background. So that makes you a little bit like me. Bless your heart. There were 5 of them surrounding me on the plane coming out, and they all had a choir going, the little ones. Thank heavens. Oh, I thought I was going to be presented. Thank God for earphones. It was wonderful. But anyway, so some of you had that background. I spent my whole teaching time in and around Toronto, and I've taught every grade, as Patty pointed out to you. And I ended up being the superintendent director of what was then the largest board in Canada. It was always between Calgary and Peel. And Peel is west of Toronto. It was a larger board than Toronto. We had 279 schools. So we were doing okay. And I thought, boy, I got a great job here, you know. I got a great business card. I got a parking spot that nobody else can go to, just me. And it was close to the building, and I never went anywhere, but I took it. And all the consultants that ran all over the place, they didn't have a spot. They had to park outside. And so I had that job, and it was a good job. I enjoyed it. And then I retired, and I had read 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Covey asked me to come and work with them, and so I got to train 7 habits all over the darn place. And then I wrote a book, and Solution Tree ended up asking me if I would come and work with them. And now I have a new project. It's going to be released next week in Winnipeg called Planning for School and Student Success. And it's a process where we're going to train folks to help schools be better places. And so none of you have done that. But my claim to fame that none of you have is that the west fence line on our property was the Gretzky property. And Walt Gretzky and I were born 2 days apart. He's been my best friend for life. None of you can say that. And I can tell you, when Wayne Gretzky was in Arizona, as Kevin knows, I spend March in Arizona, and I used to go to the games and get really nice seats. When he was there. Now I'm like everybody else, just get to have a seat. So I don't see the world as you see it. And that's the good news. Mary Lynn gave some of you a book. Something about ideas. The Life of an Idea? The Art of an Idea, okay? And I actually read that book. In fact, I've got it up in my room. I should have brought it down because there's a quote in there I want to use somewhere during the presentation. And what it says in the book, basically, is that we kill ideas because they don't agree with the way we see things. That all of us are kind of have this parameters around which we see the world. And some of you are what he calls sunrisers. And sunrisers are people that get up in the morning with some kind of purpose and something that they want to get done. And sunsetters are ones that get up in the morning hoping the day ends soon because they have nothing to do. I've been retired for 18 years. This morning I should be in Tim Hortons bitching about education. But here I am. And why do I want to go and sit in Tim Hortons? Many of you will know last year I was supposed to work with you and I had cancer. I wasn't asking for that, but I got colon cancer. And that wasn't a lot of fun. I didn't ask for that. But I did realize that the response I made to it, the choices I made around it, would be mine to give. But what I discovered is that once I had said I couldn't come here and I couldn't go to 28 other places that I had in my calendar, I got up in the morning after I had canceled all that and realized that reading the paper and walking the dog wasn't going to do it. And the second day, the dog started hiding. He didn't want to walk anymore. And I was getting bloody depressed reading the paper. And so I had to make some choices. And I phoned my publisher, and things have led to me having a whole new approach to life. So the way you see things determines what you get, and what you do determines what you get. It's a simple picture. But a lot of people don't believe that. They believe that the answer is to find somebody to blame. See, I was a vice principal in high school. It was a large high school in Toronto. And that was my first administrative position. And I had all the kids that misbehaved from A to H. They were mine. And that was a bad part of the alphabet. I had a lot of business. And the kids would come down, and I would talk to the kids, and I'd send them back, knowing they would come back again. And it got to the point where I could look at at the timetable, and I could say it's period 2. 10C is in French. That means that Bill is coming down to my office, because he came every French period. So damned if Bill didn't arrive in French period. And I said, Bill, weren't you here yesterday? Yes. And didn't we have a conversation, and didn't you make a promise you wouldn't come back today? Probably. Well, Bill, here you are. It didn't work. Why are you here? I don't know. Well, who sent you? The teacher. What did the teacher say? I forget. I said, Bill, this isn't working. We've got to change the rules. I have to come up with a whole new C here, and here it is. I don't want to see you the rest of the week. If you don't come to my office for the rest of the week, you and all the other kids I don't want to see this week will be eligible to win 2 tickets to a basketball game to the Raptors. But if you come back to my office, Bill, you will no longer be eligible for the tickets. So deal? Yeah. Now you get back to the classroom and behave. So he goes back to the classroom. The teacher says, what did Mr. Hulley say to you? Well, he's taking me to the basketball game. And I would do that every day. That was my life. And one day I said to myself that what I'm getting is not what I want. I don't want to be locked in this bloody office dealing with kids after the fact. It's already a problem when I get it, and it's not working. I'm seeing the same kids over and over and over. So there were two other vice principals. I went to them and said, listen, guys. In those days, they were all guys. I said, listen, guys, would you mind splitting up A and H when they arrive and giving me a month to change my life? And they said, yeah, okay. So I plotted the dots. I looked at period 1 and said, where does most of my trouble come from? Well, I'm going to save them a trip. I'm going to meet them in the classroom. So I got to the classroom early, and I pushed the 2 or 3 or the 4 desks together, and I made that my learning group. I saved them the trip to my office. And so I sat with them. And during the day, during the period, I'd help them with their learning a little bit, and I'd have some fun. And if they were struggling, I'd step in and help out. And if the teacher was struggling with a part of the lesson, I'd jump up and say, I love this part. Could I teach it for you? And I told the teacher, I'm coming back every day for a month. Well, don't think that didn't change things. The teachers began to know I was going to come. They began to know I'd help them out if they were having trouble. The kids knew I was helping them with their learning. And what happened? Well, I changed my life. We all started doing that. We got to the point where one vice principal could stay in the office and deal with the emergencies that always crop up when you've got adolescent, pre-adolescent kids together. The rest of them were out working in classrooms, helping teachers get better results with kids. See, when you change the C, and you no longer see your job the way you used to see it, then that will allow you to do different and to get different. And that's what really we're going to do today and tomorrow. I'm all about C. I'm all about you looking at your C and asking the question, is it working? So, in a performance cycle, how I live my life and the results I get, the C is really my personal perception. It's based upon a number of things. The experiences I've had, the knowledge I possess, and the mindset that I have. And so when I was given that book by Mary Lynn and read it, there's 3 or 4 things in there that I underlined that I ended up. There's one on reading when the letters are all mixed up, and we carry on about spelling, and we discover in this little thing in the book that if you know the first and the last letter of the word, you can read the whole darn passage. And it makes sense, even though the rest of it's all screwed up. And we go on and on and on about making sure that every word is spelled correctly. I'm not saying I'm against spelling. Don't throw stuff. All I'm saying is there are some C's, like in school. What do we know? There's a C that's held by a whole bunch of teachers and by a whole lot of schools, that if a kid isn't ready, they should repeat the grade. Well, I did a study in York and Saskatchewan 2 years ago. They were interested in kids that failed. Did it make any difference? And so we went back for 10 years. We discovered that in the primary division, grades 1, 2, 3, they had 147 kids that had repeated one of the 3 grades. The rationale being that the kid was not ready to be successful in the next year, so we'll keep them for another year and they'll be more ready. Of the 147 kids, when we went back in grade 8, this was end of grade 3, we went back in grade 8 and checked how they were doing. Only 4 of them were passing. They wasted a year of kids' lives that made no difference. But then what else do we know? Well, we know social promotion. We move them on because of their age. Well, what do we know for sure? We know for sure they can't be successful because they're not ready to be successful. So repeating doesn't help them, and social promotion doesn't help them. So what's the answer? The answer is the kid has to pass. There is no other answer. Failure cannot be an option that's available to kids in school. We've got to eliminate failures. We can't accept a failure rate of 5% or 10% or 7%. We can't do it because it won't make any difference. Kids that fail give up. They don't try harder. And so we have a C in schools that drives me crazy. But then people say, well, all kids can't pass. Well, buy a copy of Harbors of Hope, my first book. There's a school in Regina, Saskatchewan. It's a small inner-city school, about 40% Aboriginal kids. It has every reason, with mobility rates and everything else, not to be a successful school. But they went 7 years in a row and had every single kid in that school go to grade 4 reading at level. 100%. No, not special ed. Regular graded kids, 100% of them go on to grade 4 reading at level. It can be done. But it can't be done with the old C. Because the old C says that some kids will fail. It's acceptable. And so what has to happen in schools is that we have to begin to see things differently. And so we do things in schools like we suspend kids. We have anti-bullying programs that aren't working because we're focused on the bully, and we should be really helping kids get skills to deal with bullies. I mean, we do so many things and they're not working. See, my dad had a saying. It's a farm saying. When a horse dies, you should dismount. But we just don't do that in education. We just drag the horse to a new location and declare it alive. Or we say, well, you know, we can get drugs and help this horse out. Or we redefine dead. There's so many things we do, but horses are dying in education all the time, and we just let on it's not happening. And so I'm going to challenge, I hope, some of the C's around education. Some of them you won't like because they're near and dear to your heart. But you go to commencements all the time, don't you? And you get a good seat on the stage usually. At least you hope for that. But what do we know about the kids that are winning the awards? They're not the kids that need the awards. Those are the kids that are going to do fine in life. They've been doing fine in life forever. Now, there's nothing wrong with giving them an award. That's a political thing, and it's worth doing. The community says we value learning. Good stuff. Who needs the award? The kids that are struggling. We have student councils. Who gets elected to the student council? The kids that don't need to be in the student council. They'll be on councils the rest of their bloody life. We need task forces. We need groups of kids that get a chance to deal with an issue, to make a decision, to make a commitment. And it's the kids that have the problems that should be doing that, not the ones that don't. And so I'm going to, I think, hopefully challenge some of the things, but you need to understand this. I leave, so I can say anything. You have to live with it, and I know that. But I also know that most change comes from disagreement. Very little change comes from agreement. So when you sit as a board of trustees and you make a decision and it's unanimous, and it truly is unanimous, you all feel it deep in your heart, you feel pretty good about that because you're all in agreement. The nights you don't like is when you go home from a meeting where you haven't had agreement, where people are pretty steamed up about issues. And they're steamed up because they don't believe that the way that you're moving is the right way to go. But if you listen to those folks, and you truly do collaborate and try to find a decision that is win-win for both sides, then everybody walks away feeling better. But that's not really the way we do it. I went to my granddaughter's cross-country race. She's 8. In Halton Board of Education. We live in Burlington. And so I don't know if 8-year-olds should be running cross-country. But they had it. So I went. Now, if I had been a competitive dad, it would have been a terrible day. Because she and her best friend, Jada, finished the cross-country race holding hands. I mean, I had been training her. And I've been working with her, and I give her the Gatorade. I mean, come on. She bloody holds hands with Jada. And I said to her, honey, how did you like the cross country? She said, Dad, it was great. She calls me Beepaw. It was great, Beepaw. I said, what did you like most about it? Well, Jada and I, the leaves were so pretty. But there were people standing along the course yelling at the kids. Faster, you know, come on, get by. For what purpose? See, who takes phys ed in high school? Athletes. Who needs it? Non-athletes. Why do we do that? We do that because that's what we do. But not everybody does that. You see, there are C's that are different than that. I was in an elementary school the other day, and the announcements came up. Tonight, in floor hockey, the only hockey being played, really, In floor hockey, the Hawks are playing the Canucks or some, I forget who was playing who. Well, I was there the whole day. I was working with teacher teams, collaborative groups, and kind of helping them develop rules of collaboration. So I was late leaving, and the hockey game was on. So I went in, and I was watching. These kids were having a great time. And the young teacher was standing by the door, and I said, this is fun. They're having a really good time. He says, oh, yeah. He said, we've changed it this year. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, in the old days, we used to have teams, and they were the teams for the whole season. And about the third game, you'd know the teams that were going to win. And then what I discovered as the teacher is the teams that weren't winning, the kids stopped coming. And so we were forfeiting games because they only had 3 players because they knew they were going to lose. And he said, I thought that was stupid. So I said, I changed the rules. He said, now when the 2 teams come, I line them up along the side. And then I call them off. Number 1, you go there, 2 here, 1, 2, 1, 2. And he says, I get kids from both teams on both teams. This is team 1, this is team 2. But they got Hawks and they got Canucks on both teams. And then they play their little hearts out. And at the end of the game, they all sit down. Team 1, today you won the game. Way to go. How many of you are Canucks? Each of you get 2 points for the Canucks. Now, team 2, you didn't win, but you showed up. How many of you are Canucks? You all get 1 point for the Canucks. Who wins the game? The team with the most players there. It changes everything. They still compete like crazy when they're playing the game, but at the end, it's for who showed up. And so they're getting the best of both worlds. They're getting the competition, but they're also getting the kids that want to be there. And so small changes, big difference. And so you've got to always be checking your see and asking yourself, am I seeing this right? Is there any other way of seeing it? And we're going to have a conversation in a couple of minutes, and you're going to find out that everybody doesn't see the world as you see it. Doesn't make you wrong or right. It simply means there are other ways of seeing it. Because then you take actions, and the actions lead to your results. And so if you want to kind of shave it all back, we get from our lives what we deserve from our lives. And those of you in the room who are happy, I'm going to talk to you about happiness on the last day. Happiness is a choice. There's nobody in this room that doesn't have trouble. I mean, I tell you I had cancer. Everybody in this room has been touched by cancer. I mean, you may not have had it, but you know somebody that has. I mean, it's just the way it is. And you can't do anything about that. And all of us in this room have had things that have gone on in our lives. Aging parents, struggling kids, marriages that aren't as healthy as we'd like them to be. Schools that are losing kids, and you're in that closing or keeping them open debate. I mean, life is a series of things that go on, and it's our response that makes the difference. And so it's our willingness to say, we can work our way around this that makes a difference. And so that's the picture of life performance, where you see organizations like your school district, and like this hotel, and like TELUS. They get the results they deserve because of what they're doing. It's the same picture. So organizations have purpose. They have vision. They have missions. And that's the stuff that I worked with you last year in looking at what is, and I know it's all over your stuff, what you believe to be important. It's your vision and your mission. And so organizations all have those, okay? And that's the upfront C. So we can think of organizations we know like FedExpress. What does FedEx say? The world on time. That's what they're about. The world on time. They guarantee it. They're the only carrier that guarantees. You get your money back from FedEx if they don't deliver on time. The others, you get a credit. But with them, they send your money back. Now, how famous, how good have they become? Well, they write a book every year, The FedEx Way. And in there are stories of FedEx employees who have done what was ever necessary to get to the world on time. There's a story in there of a guy who lost the key to one of the pickup boxes. And he went to a hardware store and got tools and wrenches so he could take the bolts off the machine, off the drop box. He loaded the whole damn drop box onto his truck because he had to be the world on time. I guess you're blessed out here because I think this is where Nordstrom's coming. And Nordstrom's, when they arrive, those of you that know Nordstrom stores, they promise service that you could never expect. That's their catchphrase. I was in Orange County. I was going to Laguna Beach a while ago to do a thing with some psychologists that were working down there. I forgot to take it was a one day. I was flying in the morning. I was only doing an hour and a half and flying home. I wasn't even staying overnight. So I packed my suitcase, my suit in a little plastic bag, and I knew that the South Coast Mall was down that way, and my wife never goes by that without stopping. And I had been in Nordstrom's with her, and I'd visited their washroom. And I decided I would change my clothes in the Nordstrom washroom. So I did. But I forgot to take a tie. I packed beautifully, but no tie. So I go out into the tie department, and I explained to the lady there that I need a tie. I forgot my tie, and we have a laugh about this. She goes through the tie rack and says, I don't think I have a tie here that I'd feel really good about you wearing with that. She said, but there's a tie store down the mall. She said, give me your jacket. I'll go run down there and see if I can find something. She's going down the mall to look for a tie for me. And, of course, she brings back a tie. It looks great with the thing. And I paid for she had already paid for the tie down the street, so I gave her the money for buying me the tie. Now, I wrote a story, and I sent that to Nordstrom to tell them that. And in the 2011 issue of the Nordstrom Way, my story's in the book. But there's a million stories in there. The story of any employee in Nordstrom's can give you up to $500 to settle a complaint without anyone's approval. So there's a story of a guy in Chicago. His wife last year was getting the snow tires on her car. She bought these snow tires. Asked her husband to have them mounted. He was supposed to go and play cards with the boys. Wasn't anxious to get the car, but she said, honey, I have to go down to the city tomorrow. I need the tires. So he stops into the local service center. Guy says, nice tires, sir, but they don't fit the rims. Now he's really browned off because he's late for cards. It doesn't fit. So he goes to Nordstrom's. That's the only place she shops. He walks in with his 4 tires, goes to the cosmetic counter. It's the closest counter. And he says, I'm not happy with Nordstrom's. My wife bought these tires, and they don't fit the rims. The person said, do you have your bill? He says, no. She said, any idea how much they cost? He said, well, I don't know, but tires are about $100 a piece. He said, okay, here's $400. If it's more, bring me the bill. If it's less, keep it. He thinks, my God, what a store. So he goes to the card game. He tells the story to the guys. One of the guys said, well, that's interesting because they don't sell tires. And so we have places that do business that if you buy something, you don't have the receipt, and if you don't have, proof, you get nothing back. They don't understand. Every woman in this store, in this room, has a special, their favorite shopping place. My wife, it's Joelle's on Brant Street in Burlington. And that's the only place she will go. Now, her birthday's the 28th. I phoned yesterday, and Joelle's become a personal friend, I think probably because we built most of her store. And I said to Joelle, next week on Tuesday, I want to stop in, and my wife, I think, needs a chunky sweater. She's been talking about chunky sweaters. I said, can you lay some stuff out for me? And what's going to happen on Tuesday? I'm going to go into Joelle's, and she's going to have 6 or 8 sweaters laying out. They're all going to fit her. They're all going to be colors that will go with what she already has because they've got that in their computer. I'm going to pick one and think I've shopped. My wife's going to be happy as hell. Joelle's going to be happy. And I'm going to be happy. And I would go to that woman anytime because of the way she treats. But there are other people that don't do that. I don't know about you, but I go to the Bay in the Burlington Mall. You're on your own. I mean, it's bloody lonely. You got to go looking for cash. You even want to pay. You can't find a place to pay. And then you don't know how much the price is because there's no tag. And then you're supposed to go and scan it yourself. I go to scan it myself, and it comes back and says, poorly scanned. Anyway, organizations have it, okay? You all have purpose statements, don't you, for your board? You have mission statements? See, I do a lot of schoolwork, okay? I go into schools, I see the principal. I said, you got a mission? Yeah. I said, could I see it? Just a second. They open up the door. They say, the secretary, can you find the mission? The secretary says, the what? You remember that thing? We took a Pro D day and we worked on it and built it in calligraphy. We had it framed. Oh, that damn thing. I haven't seen that in a while. Well, see if you can find it. He wants to see it. So she does find it. She brings it in. It's beautiful. It says something like, our mission is to support, nurture, and encourage the growth of each child so they may self-actualize, make a difference for themselves and society, and in the process become a lifelong learner. What the hell is that? That's poor poetry. You go to Rocky Mountain House, you go to Central High School, you walk in, right in the wall it says, every kid, every day, a success. That's a mission. That's a purpose. As soon as you see words like encourage, nurture, support, it means you'll do nothing. It's the kid's problem. And so schools, when you see a mission like, learning by all, whatever it takes, and they're focused on that, then what happens? They build structures and strategies and processes to make that possible. And now the processes contribute to reaching your C. And what do they get? Well, hopefully they get better results. And so schools that are low-performing schools, and I hate to say it so bluntly, but I get to leave, deserve it. Sure, they've got kids, they've got poverty, they've got mobility. I understand all those issues, and they're all legitimate. But that's not an excuse. You've still got to be always on the road of where you want to be and who you want to be, and you've got to find strategies and structures. High mobility, they've got to make units smaller. They have to make the report card cumulative for the time the kid was there. A kid that's failing can't wait a term. They got to know tonight how they did today. Best teacher I've ever known, Charlie Wright. I worked with Stock. I don't know, the transportation, probably not in the West, but it's big in the East. They transport a lot of kids from schools. And I did their annual conference this year in Niagara Falls. And this guy came up to me and said, "You taught me." And I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, Burnhamthorpe Collegiate." I said, "Was it any good?" He said, "You were the second best." I thought, oh, geez. I said, "Who was the best?" "Charlie Wright." The story I'm going to tell you. I became a principal, Mimico High School in Toronto. And I wanted to change the role. I wanted to be seen as a supporter. I wanted to be seen as a committed professional that was interested in helping kids do better. I didn't want to be seen as someone who was in command, control, comply. I wanted to be much more cooperate, consensus seek, and so on. And so I wanted my first classroom visit to be positive. I wanted the teachers to hear that this guy is different. He really wants to help us. So Charlie Wright was a teacher in the school. I picked him as my first visit because I knew it would be a good one. And I knew he was creditable and he would tell the rest of the teachers, this Hulley guy's okay. So I went into his classroom to teach. He's teaching senior math. Every time he asks a question, 100% of the kids put their hand up. Every question. So at the end I said, "Charlie, how come they all know the answer?" He said, "They don't." I said, "Well, they all put their hands up." He said, "Yes, if they know the answer, they put their right hand up. If they don't, they put their left hand up." I said, "Well, what's that all about?" He says, "If I see a whole lot of left hands, they ain't getting it. My teaching isn't working." See, Rick Stiggins calls that assessment for learning. That's formative. He makes a lot of money. Charlie got nothing. He says to the kids, "Listen, we've just finished the first unit. And tomorrow's the test. You remember what I told you the first day you were in my class? I told you that you must be an exceptional class because I am an exceptional teacher." And he said, "I also told you, if you think you're going to fail my math class, get over it because it ain't going to happen. Because when you fail, I fail, and I ain't any failure. So tomorrow's our first test, and you're going to pass." And the questions on the test are going to be like these. If you can do those questions, you're going to pass tomorrow. And if you can't, you're not. So here's a file card. I want you all to work the solutions to those 4 questions on the file cards. And so the kids start working on the file cards. Charlie waits at the door. As they're leaving, he collects their cards. Kids have left the room. He goes up to his desk, takes the cards. This kid gets it. Oh, no, doesn't get it. Gets it. Oh, doesn't get it. Makes 2 piles. The next morning, the kids come in. He said, first of all, there are 5 of you I have to apologize to, because I thought I made you ready for success, and you're not. And remember I said failure's not an option? So you can't write the test today, because if you do, you're going to fail. The rest of you, here's the test. You 5, I'm so sorry for letting you down, but come on over here. I'm going to fix it today. And he'd work with the 5 kids, give them the file card. He wouldn't let the kid write the test till he knew the kid was going to pass it. Now, it was slow going early in the year, because last year's teacher didn't work like that. But you see, math is cumulative. One leads to the next. And so once he got the first one right, many fewer kids failed the second unit. By the end of the year, they were flying. He said to me, I am sick and tired of giving kids pencils. He said, I need $50, Wayne, to solve the pencil problem. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I give them pencil today, they don't have one tomorrow. They evaporate. And you can't do math without a pencil. So he said, will you give me $50 to fix the problem? I said, you guarantee it'll be fixed? He says, guaranteed. So he goes out to a lumber yard. He buys 2x4s, paints them red, drills a hole in the 2x4, puts a wire ring in, goes to the industrial shop with a box of pencils, drills holes in the end of pencils, puts a wire ring in, gets white garden chain, he hooks the 2x4 to the pencil. He hangs them by the door. Says to the kid, you need a pencil? Borrow one. The kid takes the pencil, the chain, and the 2x4 off to their desk. Never lost another pencil. But he was just an amazing guy, because whenever he had a problem, he felt there was a way to solve it and a way he would go. He died young. We had to rent an arena for his funeral because of the people that wanted to be part of it. When this young man said to her, you know, not young anymore, I was second best, and he said Charlie was better, he was right. I was a hell of a teacher, but I wasn't Charlie Wright. He always seemed to be able to find the way. And so in schools, when it isn't working, the horse is at least sick. You can't continue to do what isn't working. And yet there are schools that do it. Teachers that keep drop files. They pulled out the unit they used last year. I worked with a school division in Ontario in August, getting ready for school opening. Had all the high school teachers in the district. It's a fairly large district in Eastern Ontario. They were in a big room around tables. And I said, listen, somewhere in that first week of school, probably the first day, most high school kids will show up. Some, that'll be the only time. They're going to take a peek to see is there anything different. And some of them you'll never see again, and if you see them again, it's going to be because they're dragged in and they're not going to be ready to learn. So I said, you're only going to have one first day. I said, you're actually only going to have one first word that comes out of your mouth on that first day. And that word can determine what kind of year you're going to have. And the first activity you ask the kids to do, you can never repeat it. And if you can't get them on that first one, chances are you're not going to get them. And so I said, what are you going to do that you've never done before on that first day that's going to cause the kids to say, wow, this is going to be a different year? So I'm going around the room, and they're all chatting it up. And there's just one guy, and he's looking at me, and he's making eye contact. And I could tell he wants me to kind of come over. So I go over. As I get close, he interrupts someone else who's speaking and said, I don't care what that guy says. I've been teaching 22 years. And I've said the same thing for 22 years, and I'm going to say it again this year. He said, I teach geography. And I say to the kids, you look around the classroom. Look at 2 other people. One of the 3 is going to fail my geography course. That was this August. And to think that somehow that's going to motivate kids to do well? And that's not a story I'm making up. And so that happens, and we've got to stop it, okay? Now, this is the C's that you've declared. I don't think it's news to you. It's on your folder. I see it all over the place. So public schools are the first choice of our communities where all our children learn and live the values of democracy together, reflecting our hope and shaping the future of our communities. And what's key to that? The public schools will be the first choice, right? And that's what the business you're in. And it's why I guess you've developed this organization that's separate from everybody, because you believe as an organization that that's your mission. That's what you have to do, protect public education. That's what you say. And here's your mission: to champion inclusive public school education with local elected school boards dedicated to student success. So I really like that one. That's okay. That's philosophical, and I love. But this one, student success, so that when you meet, I mean, wouldn't that be the best measure of public schools? Probably shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to. No, I better not. Well, it's in your province, and it's a public school and a separate school. And I didn't know I was working for both of them at the same time. I didn't realize they had schools because the Catholic school division was so big that I didn't think they had any schools where I was already working. And there was a competition. The public school was taking the kids out of the Catholic school. They weren't too happy, and they asked me if I could rescue the school. And so I was competing against myself because I was doing both schools. But I'm not going to tell you the whole story because but it was fun. And I got to leave. But that whole notion of school success, okay? Now, I think Mary Lynn had a lot to do with this and probably working with the executive group. But this is kind of a catchphrase, I guess, to kind of help you understand the role that you play. So she calls you, or I don't know where that came from, but I see it all over the place, okay? Every time I get a note from her, it says this at the bottom. So I thought to myself, well, what the hell is that? Architects in action. So I went to the dictionary and I said to myself, okay, what's an architect? It's someone, this is out of Webster Merriam online dictionary, someone who plans and designs structures to meet specific needs. That's what architects do, according to that book. Now I look at that and I ask myself, is that what you do? Now this is where governance comes in, doesn't it? I mean, there's a whole bunch of issues that end up being around this, I understand. I remember working in a school division in Manitoba, in the southern part of the province, and they had the chair of the board was a great guy, and the superintendent was a great guy. And so I had dinner with the two of them before one of my workshops, and we were chatting. And I said, you two seem to get along so well. And the chair of the board said, yeah, well, we figured it out. And I said, what do you mean you figured it out? He says, well, when the superintendent arrived, we described for him, this is your sandbox. You can play in there all you want. But you come outside the sandbox, your ass is grass. Now, I thought that was a little different way of looking at governance. But for these two guys, it seemed to work. I guess the sandbox was described clearly enough. They both agreed with it. If you're in the box, that's okay. But as I read this, you know, that's what you do. You plan and design structures to meet specific needs. Now, I just want you to keep that in your mind because we're coming to an activity, and that may be what you want to talk about. So I thought, okay, now if I take my see, do, get, it should still apply because it's, in my view, universal. So now I tried to make it fit. So the C, it would strike me from an architect, is the vision. So you go to have an addition put on your house, a renovation, or you're going to have a new place built, or you're going to have a new drive shed, or whatever it might be. And so you ask the architect if they will make a design of something for you, right? Now, they're going to ask you a bunch of questions. They're going to want to know, what do you want to use this for? What do you value in terms of appearance? Is it, do you want brick, or do you want this, or do you want that? They just don't start drawing pictures because it's you they're working for. They're designing this for you, the structures and the processes, to meet a specific need, if I take my definition. So they're going to spend a whole lot of time. It's not their vision. They're helping you get clarity on your vision. Then what do? Well, it strikes me their do is to create a blueprint, which is the plan for whatever it is you're going to do. Now, what happens then? Well, then it has to be turned over to engineers and folks that understand bylaws and all the other things that go on, building materials, the kind of soil that you're building in, what sort of stain might be best. And so there's a plan that has to get drawn up. That's what you're going to do. And the architect doesn't do that piece. They make recommendations, but the engineers have to become involved in the structures and the processes and the timelines. And then what happens? Well, someone monitors this, usually a general contractor, to be sure that the plan is being implemented and things are being done properly. And so there's a monitoring piece. And finally, if I don't trip, there is a reality. The building's finished. That's the result. Good architects, I think, would then come back and say, now, is what we did what we thought we were going to do? Are we happy with all of this? And they're going to evaluate the process and all the other things that went on with it. So my picture, I think, still holds up if you see yourselves as architects. You don't build the building, but you sure have got the plan in place that's going to lead to the building being built that we want to do. Now, leading up to our activity, okay, because you've heard enough of me already. Our C is our personal perceptions. And out of our C's, we tell ourselves a story. So in this room, I know right now some of you like me because I think like you, or I say things that you like. Some of you aren't sure yet, and some of you decided, are we paying this guy? You're said to yourself, he's got to be from Ontario. He just doesn't get it. And I know that. That's always the way it is. And all I hope for is that I get more you liking me than disliking me. But I know that that's the reality. And so that you've told yourself a story about me, and I'll live it out for you. You'll find in everything I do. So when I did this thing about failing, you're going to go back and say, well, they failed my daughter in grade 1 and she did fine. Sure. That was the 4 out of the 147 in Yorkton that made it. I understand that. There are people in this room that smoke. They could live to be 100. I know that too. For them, smoking's okay. But what we need to understand is that the stories we tell ourselves, everything has to get through the story. And we see it through the stories that we tell ourselves. Life's a series of stories. It's a series of problems, then you die, okay? It's kind of the way it is. And it's the quality of your choices that make the difference. So now you take action and you get results. And that's how our lives work. Well, I want you to have what I call a sense conversation, okay? And to do this, you need to be paired up. So if you have an odd number at your table, you're going to have to find somebody else that's, well, at an odd number table, not that's odd. And so I would recommend once your table's paired up, if there's somebody left over, just stand up. Look for somebody else standing up. It would be nice if you were someone from your own district, but threesomes don't work for this. Oh, man. It's going to be a long program. I can see you're already giggling. It's going to get worse. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to do this, okay? I want you to sit facing the person you're speaking with. No over-the-shoulder stuff. I want you to turn your chairs around so that you're looking at each other, okay? I want you to make eye contact, and I want you to look pleasant. I watched you. Look at you're already. Whoa! I'm not finished yet. My God! If you were in my class, you'd all have bloody detentions tonight. He's already declared himself odd, and he doesn't even know. Look. I watched you this morning. I was here early, okay? And I watched you come in. Some of you look great. God, you're just, bubbling along. You're hugging people and carrying on. Some of you come in like, well, beats work. But there were a few you came in looking like your dog had died. And I know if I walk up to the last group and say, how you doing? They're going to say, fine. I'm going to say, well, you should tell your face it doesn't know. I mean, just think about your own board. One night, hide outside where they come in. Look at their faces. It's Barry, right? Barry? Paul, sorry, Paul, Bennett. Paul's in Peace River. We've known each other through experiences in the past. I said to him this morning, I said, you're happy looking. I don't know if you've been drinking all night or what. But he looks happy. And he talks happy. And he's not going on about, oh, geez, we don't have any money, and trustees want a bunch. No, none of that. All he talked about was positive things. And I said to him at the end, I said, I like you. But some of you, my God, you got to get over it. Life is real. You know, you're never going to be younger than you are right now. This is as good as it gets, okay? Trust me, you're going to learn. The only thing golden about the golden years is your urine. That's it. And so we're going to have some fun. You can't just sit around like, oh. So I want you to make eye contact with people and smile. Look like you're having a good time. And then I want you to nod your head occasionally so they know you're listening. Don't nod off, just nod occasionally so they'll get a sense that you're listening. And then I want you, when they have finished, I want you to summarize for them what they told you so that they know they've been heard. And then finally, I want you to express what you found most interesting or important in what they said. So you're going to kind of summarize, and you're going to say, but the point I liked most was that one. Okay, and that's called sensing. And in your package, in the workbook section, I put those rules out there for you again, okay? And now, this is what you're going to talk about. And I'm going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes each in the pair, and I'll call time. So one person will have about 2 minutes to answer number one, and then the person will kind of do the summarizing and expressing something that they felt pretty positive about. And then the other person has their chance. We probably won't finish them all, so you and your partner could pick the one you want to start with. If you don't like the first one, second, third. And if we have time, we'll go on to a second one, and you could have a chance to do that too, okay? So you decide who goes first. I'll call time after about 2 minutes. That's when you'll summarize and express, and then you'll start the other person talking. And the whole thing's going to take us about 10 minutes, okay? Okay. Just a couple more pieces I'd like to get to, then we'll take our coffee break. That was neat to watch you from up here. Obviously, you're individuals that are pretty used to conversing, because some groups have terrible time with that, sitting looking at the other person, making contact that close together. I didn't see any of that here. So that, although some of you have never been heard for 2 whole minutes like that, for somebody actually listening, holding their hand up or pushing their button so they can give you the right story. It was interesting. Maurice came up during the break and was saying that last night after the MLA reception, on his way home, he was listening to CBC on the radio, and they were talking about living our life through stories. So when you're in the car by yourself, that's the real you, and the stories you're telling yourself, that's the real you. And so you can't really live your life without telling a story. It's what it is. It's the stories of our life. And so once you know that people have stories, if you can get them to tell the story, that's why in Covey's work I was so impressed with it. He said, seek first to understand, then to be understood, because you show value and honor to the other person by listening to them first. Anyway, seeing things different. For those of you that are, I know you've got the handout, but let me read it for you. Here's Edward Bear coming downstairs now, bump, bump, bump on the back of his head behind Christopher Robin. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs, but somewhere he feels there is another way. If only he could stop for a moment and think of it. And so, Winnie the Pooh had it all. And so there is a different way, and that's what we're going to focus on today, okay? So this is getting really to the heart of my presentation. Choice, not chance, determines destiny. Sure, some of us are lucky. Good things happen. But most of you that are lucky were prepared to be lucky. You had done the right things to be where you wanted to be, and it happened. And so it's the choices. So the old theory of dog training, and my daughter went through this last night. She got a little dog called a Havanese. Real expensive, about this big. I don't know how much a pound, but it was expensive. And she researched this damn thing because it's like is it a Shih Tzu that has real hair? There's some dog. Anyway, this dog has real hair. It's not like dog hair. It's like our hair. And that's the good news. The bad news, you have to have it groomed every 2 weeks. But the hair doesn't fall out. I mean, she spent weeks researching this damn dog. And they're supposed to be so friendly and so nice. And this little bugger growls and everybody looks at it. So she had in Miss Manners, came to her house on Saturday. Miss Manners. She runs a company called Train 'em, Don't Blame 'em. And so she spent 2 hours with this and decided my daughter should take this dog now to training once a week. Now, the thing is like 13 weeks old. And the growling's kind of cute. But we've got to get rid of this growl. And I'm watching this thing, and well, it's a whole stimulus response thing, okay? Like, she's got levels of rewards. Now, if you're a dog trainer, this may make complete sense to you. But it's built on this model, okay? Like, if a dog does something they're supposed to do, you give them a so-so treat, like a biscuit or something. If they do something that's even better than that, when not called upon to do it, then you give them a superior treat, which might be this with a little peanut butter on it. But if they do the ultimate thing, like don't bite you, I guess, then you give them meat. And so she has this, well, here's my daughter with all this crap she's trying to feed the dog and I'm looking at this thinking to myself, I don't know how you're going to live a life like this. Meat in one hand and peanut butter and the dog's growling. I mean, what? But that's the way you train. I understand all that, okay? That stimulus leads to response. So my wife says something that makes me angry, and I get angry. That's my response, right? And who do I blame? My wife, obviously. If she had said something else, I wouldn't have to say that. And that was the way it was when I was a vice principal. Why did you hit him? Because I didn't like the way he was looking at me. That was okay. That was enough. I got witnesses, too. I always enjoyed the witnesses, okay? And so that is a model that the world runs on, and all you have to do is to find somebody to blame, and you are off the hook. It wasn't your fault at all, okay? But what you and I have come to know is that there's a choice that gets made in there. What happens to us is very often beyond our control, but the choice is always ours to give. I was in a town in Manitoba, Beaujeu, and I was going on their vice principal retreat. No, I think the principals were on the retreat too. See, I don't understand this. Principals and vice principals retreat, but they never attack. I think they should go on an attack one time instead of bloody retreating all the time. But anyway, I was going up, and I was sitting in the staff lounge waiting for the end of the day, and the vice principal was driving me to Gimli. And I'm sitting there, and the day ends, and the teachers come into the teacher lounge. And this one teacher comes in, oh, God, that Herbie, that kid is driving me crazy. And she's just ranting about Herbie. The vice principal comes to the door, sees me, and does this. I go out, he says, bad, eh? I said, whoa. I said, she's hurt. And I said, how long has it been going on? He said, since last May. I said, so she had the kid last year? She says, no, she found out she was going to have him this year. He says, it's just been awful. And he said, what would you do about that? I said, well, I'd do nothing. I'm a consultant. I said, however, I think if it had been me, and I was the principal of the school, I would have been calling a Herbie Summit. I would have been bringing all the teachers together and saying, Herbie's driving Mary crazy. Mary, what's he doing? And let Mary tell the story. Other teachers would say, I don't mind the little guy. If you're having trouble with Mary, send him over with a note. Someone else would have his brother. He seems to be okay. I could send his brother over. Why don't we start a program for him? And the teachers would all come together on it instead of poor old Mary going crazy. But when I looked at Mary, she was like, 40. And I discovered that Herbie was 8. An 8-year-old driving a 40 crazy? Get over it. He was providing the opportunity. You didn't have to take it. There were other choices other than going crazy. But just listen to conversations. People say things like, oh, it's been a bad day. The dog threw up, or the cat threw up a hairball. Come on. My teenage kid didn't put gas in the car. I understand all that stuff. That's called life. And so what we need to do is to understand that we have choices, okay? And it's the quality of our choices that I call your responsibility. And that really is what our day is about. It's opening that gap up and understanding there are many choices to a situation other than getting angry, because people get at my brother-in-law on the weekend. We went up to close his cottage. He fancied himself a plumber because he's got a, what do they call those ranches you can reach up and tighten things? Closet wrench. Since he has one of those, he calls himself a plumber. But he can't plumb. Everything leaks. But he's persistent, okay? So he's up under there doing something. I don't know what the hell he's even doing, but he does it every year. And he's up and he's cursing and swearing and he's flashing. He's getting old. He's almost as old as me. And lying on your back, you get dizzy, first of all, and then you can't get up. You got to get the jaws of life to come. And so he's working on this thing, and the water's dripping on his face. And I mean, it's just awful. So then he throws the ranch and puts a big dent in the door of the fridge. And I know his wife, my sister-in-law. That dent will not do. So next year he's a plumber and he's going to be a purchaser of a new fridge. And what's he going to blame? The ranch. Hurt my knuckles. I got angry. There were other options other than getting angry. Now he'll pay the price of his choice. And we always pay the price of our choices. I mean, it's like a banquet we prepare for ourselves. And so what I wanted to do after the break is to get you to understand that people that get by, this is my second book, Getting By or Getting Better. What I discovered that people get by, and they can do this in education, okay? As long as they comply. Show up on time, leave on time, get the reports in on time, don't kill more than 2 kids, they're fine. We can't get, it's just the way it is. And so that's your head. That's looking at the rules and the regulations. BC, I've spent more time there this year than anywhere because of last year and all the trouble they had around labor. And they're asking, I'm doing this workshop like getting over last year. They pay me and I go. But what the hell is that? I mean, just get over it. But they want a speech and a workshop. Like, I don't know. I do it. It's fun. I have a hell of a time, but I don't know. They want to work from their head. See, getting better is the heart and its commitment. So those of you, for instance, who believe in supervision, think of the word, okay? I have supervision. Yours is just regular vision. I can see stuff that you can't see. Now, I know there's a big push for supervision. I got to tell you right now, when you jack up supervision in a school district, all you get is compliance. You push people to the middle. The people that are on the edges making the difference get pushed back in. We want commitment. Commitment is a gift from the heart. It doesn't come from the head. That's the teachers in your schools that take the kids on the French trip to Montreal. What teacher in their right mind would load kids on an airplane and then on buses and take them to a hotel? These are high school kids with hormones. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to sit in front of the elevator all night. What teacher would do that? The best teachers in your school. That's who's doing it. Because that's about commitment. That's not about compliance. You can't make them take kids to Quebec City. But when they choose to do it, it's the coaches in your team. I mean, tonight it could be raining out there, it'd be cold, and there's a soccer game somewhere. And you got some teachers on the sideline freezing to death. Why? Because they're committed. They're committed to the kids. They understand that one of the big things you do in school is you create memories. Some of the best memories in your life are from school. And they're not about reading, writing, and arithmetic. All of you had your best teacher, and you all had your worst teacher. They weren't all the same, just like you. One of you in the room is the best trustee in the room. One of you is the worst. Now, we're not voting. But it's true. You're not all the same. The best ones make the good choices, and they're committed. They go the extra distance every time. They're on the committee. Why would Patty want her job? She's got full time. I'm sure she has a family. She has trustee responsibility. She's got the president. What does she get as being president of your organization? Crap. People come up and say, oh, Patty, there was no tea. There was only coffee, and I like tea. Honest, people do that. I don't like my room, Patty. It's looking out on a wall. I mean, who would want that job? But what do I know? I know when she's driving home, she knows she did something. Other people just bitched. And so it's what you're willing to do becomes the question. So there's a situation, we make choices, we get results, okay? When you focus on the situation, you develop what Steve Covey calls your circle of concern. And we're good at that. What's wrong? Oh, let's have a report. And we do a lot of that, okay? But there's also, and when we focus our choices around the concern, you know, getting more clarity, getting another report, getting this, getting that, it takes you nowhere. It's not a bad thing, it gets clarity. But the minute you ask the question, what can I influence? Then what you develop is a circle of influence. And it's smaller than your concern. It's some things that you can work at. And when you work at what you could influence, as opposed to what concerns you, then what happens is you change the results. And so the rest of the morning we're going to really focus on this idea of how you find your circle of influence, how you find the moment of choice. Moment of choice is the moment of truth. It's the testing point of our character and competence. So after the break, we're going to talk about the competencies that are necessary to be an effective trustee, superintendent, whatever it is. They all come out of the same package. And then tomorrow, we're going to spend our focus more on the character side, which is available for all of us to change, and we can do it in a heartbeat. I make it 10:30, take 15 minutes. I'll start talking in 15 minutes. The first part's really good, so don't be late. So the moment of choice notion is that gap between stimulus and response, and our ability to open the gap and choose our response wisely has a lot to do with the result we achieve. So if you think of it this way, after being married 48 years, I can tell in conversation with my wife kind of the direction we're moving. I can almost anticipate what she's going to say after I say something. In fact, I think I could have both of our conversations, as she could ours. You already figured it out. And so what happens is that we end up falling into the abyss of saying, well, I know where this is going, but I'm going to go there anyway. And so people spend a fair bit of time shooting themselves in the foot when in fact there were other choices that were available. So one of the things we have to decide is the result we want. Why do we want that result? How important is it to us? And so the choices that we make to open up this gap, because what I say to my wife when she says something to me is my response to her stimulus, but my response becomes her stimulus. And therefore, in a sense, I'm always in control. Because if I can say the right thing to what she said, that becomes her stimulus, and in a sense is going to influence what she says next. And so I'm not trying to be subversive, simply to say that listening carefully and planning a response has a lot to do with what happens next. So again, for the educators in the room, superintendents and deputies and whatever else we have, how many times when a kid has arrived in your office, having been removed from a class, do you really want to say to the kid, why don't you go back and send your teacher? Because if the teacher had taken different actions, this wouldn't have happened. And yet the teacher will blame the kid because the kid said this to me, and what the teacher said back had a lot to do with what the kid said next, and away it goes. And so this idea, and this is out of Covey's work, is the notion that we have character and we bring it with us every day in our life. And the people around your table, if you know who they are, if you work with them on a regular basis, hadn't be from your district, it's possible that someone around that table, you have a deep feeling, the story you've told yourself about them is that they don't tell the truth all the time. And if that's true, then their character is always going to be suspect to you because that's the story you're going to tell yourself when they start to speak. They don't always tell the truth, and so you're going to be looking for the... But on the other hand, you may have someone around your table that you know you would trust them with your wallet. You would trust them with your child. And therefore, their character has proven to you over time that that's the way they are, and so that's what you do. I was doing a workshop somewhere in Cincinnati, and it was back in my days when I was doing a lot of work with Covey, and I finished, it was a 3-day program. The first day, A young guy came up to me and said, I just love what you've done today. He said, but it's all going to get blown apart tonight. And I said, why? He said, my wife will phone, or I'll phone my wife, and she's going to ask me what I did today. And then the next question is going to be, what are you doing for dinner? And what are you going to be doing after dinner? He said, she just doesn't trust me. And I said, oh. Well, I said, I can't do much about that. He said, I guess I understand. He says, I met her at a conference when I was married to somebody else. I said, well, I think you're close to the answer. And so character and competence come into play. And so I'm going to back order them. That's the quote as it is, and I'm going to do the competence piece first, okay? So there's a situation, we say things, we do things. It shows our character, our competence, and the result flows out the end of it. So Stephen, again, this is Stephen M.R. I guess many of you probably know that Stephen Covey died. He had a bike accident, a very healthy guy. I'm honored the fact that I was in the first training group that he ever did. He did it himself down at Sundance, which is Robert Redford's home and ski resort, and I'm taller than Bob. And so I've always held that near and dear to my heart, and I was the only school division that ever licensed ourselves as a Covey organization, so I had a strong attachment to Stephen and his work. And he had a bike accident. He was biking through the Provo Canyon, and he was hit by a car, and he just never got over it, and he died a couple of months back. And so his son, Stephen M.R. Covey, he's gone really big into trust. And Alberta, as you probably know, in fact, I've talked to 2 or 3 of you this morning, has really been a hotbed of Covey's work. See, the Western Canada has the heart, the care. When you're a farmer, you got to count on other people. Character matters. Mary Lynn knows that I had a problem with my father-in-law, who's 92. He's a farmer. And he had a heart attack, and he was still farming. He put a roof on a shed this summer at 92. And nobody was counting on this heart attack, and it was right in the middle of the harvest, and so I had to end up going up and helping and going back to it. But it was amazing to me. Within 2 days, the community had come together, and the farmers had taken over the milking. They had taken over finishing the crops off. And then a high school teacher who had a couple of kids who were struggling in a co-op program. They were farm kids, and said, why don't you, as your co-op, go and run the farm? So these kids arrive every morning, and they're now running the farm. See, that doesn't happen in cities. That's a country thing, where you understand you can't do it by yourself. And I think that's why Western Canada has always had that piece in it, and why Covey's work. But there are many school divisions in Alberta that are doing Leader in Me. There's many of you that are still doing 7 Habits training, and some of you have moved on to trust. And the idea that organizations that have a high level of trust are organizations that can make great changes. Lack of trust, it doesn't work that way. So trust is equal parts character and competence. I'm just trying to get you to the point to understand that we bring 2 pieces every day, okay? Now, competency is where I want to start. And I need for us to get kind of a list. Now, I made a list, but I could be dead wrong. However, it's too late because I've got the slides. But I think we need to, at least to have some conversation around it. So I put an activity in here, and we'll see how it goes. I'm smart enough to know if it isn't working, it isn't working. It's activity. It's on page 2. It's the top one. Now, we could go on forever, but competencies are the skills required, okay? We're not talking now about honesty. We're not talking about integrity. We're talking about the competencies, things that you need to know to be able to do a good job in the role that you fill. And so I thought it might be fun to let you talk to each other since you enjoyed the last conversation. And I've divided it up into 3 parts. The first part, I'd like you to talk with the person you were talking with before, and we had the sense conversation, and see if you can come to an agreement on up to 5. It doesn't have to be 5. You may decide there are just 3 competencies that are absolutely critical to the role of trustee. And so just working by yourself, and I'll allow you maybe 5 minutes, 4 minutes. We'll see how your discussion goes. And then we're going to skip part 2 and go to a whole table, because at the tables, I thought we were going to have probably 10 people to the table, and I think we have 8. So I think we can skip the second one and go to a large group. And so what I'd like to do then is to have the 2 of you make your list and then share around your table when I call time each of your lists and see if you come up with a list of 5. And then we'll do a couple of groups around to report out. What do you think are the 5 most important competencies required for successfully filling the role of trustee? And then I'll show you the list that I created that's going to kind of drive the day, and hope that my list is somewhat close to yours. And if it's not, then your list is wrong. But it was a nice try. Okay, so pair it up first of all, and I'll give you about 4 or 5 minutes to come up with the competencies up to 5, and then we'll have the tables have a talk, and then we'll just reveal what they are.